Hi everyone, welcome back to my garage. Today I'm going to make a quick video just to show you a recent build that I made. It is a 30-pound thrust trolling motor installation on my Hobie Outback kayak. I'll show you how I did it, how it works, and then I'll also give you my feedback following testing it this past weekend. So come along, let's have a look. So before we start the walkthrough and taking a look at the trolling motor, I just want to give a shout out to a YouTuber from which I got most of the ideas, especially the variable speed controller. What I've done is copy what he did. He's got some really good instructional videos on installing trolling motors on kayaks, and as well as the wiring and all those details. So I'm not going to delve into the details. And rather say go have a look at his videos. They're very informative, very helpful. I'll share a link in the bottom, and that is Tahu Yak Fisher, and I'll put a link to his YouTube channel in the description below. Like I said, most of what I did, I borrowed ideas from him, including some other things I saw on YouTube. So this installation is definitely, I can't take credit for it, but I must say it worked out really well. So let's have a look at what I did. Something that was very important to me was I did not want to do any drilling into my kayak or do any additional installations. I wanted to use what I had on the kayak to do the trolling motor install. The other thing is I do have this power pole mount at the back, and I have a power pole, which is something I do use a lot. And I plan to keep on using. The motor that I've made and installed, we cannot use that in our main kayak fishing tournament series up here in Canada. Motors are not yet allowed, but I can use it in some online events, and I can use it especially when doing pre-fishing and exploring new waters. So from the onset, I wanted to use this bracket to mount my trolling motor. So what I did is through very simple, I took a piece of 4x4 wood and drilled a hole through it, and I spaced it so that basically this will slot into my power pole mount, and I can actually bolt it down in my power pole mount and use the trolling motor. And if I just want to take it off, it's as simple as the same procedure of unclipping your power pole. You unclip this and it just slots in there, and take it. And it's a quick in and on and off for when I want to use the one versus the other. So let's have a look at the clamp. What I did is I just cut the clamp off straight. I cut a piece of wood that fits into the power pole bracket there with enough offset so that the motor comes past the back handle, and now we'll just clamp straight through this. So this is just a piece of wood I modified. I sprayed it black. The only other modification I did to the trolling motor, I took off the whole control head. You only use, and you'll see this in all the installation videos and build videos out there, you just use the power wires that's in it. I used an elbow which just slides over this end, and I used these rubber protectors that you buy to slide over the bottom of furniture, legs to protect your floor. Bought one of those, and the cable just comes straight through there. So this power pole bracket just slides through the block of wood through to the other side. We slide the other spacer on this side, and we screw and we tighten this. I'm not going to tighten it all the way now, but you tighten it down and clamp it down, and that trolling motor is now in place. Now, the one thing that I did do, you'll see here's a little bracket here. This is basically to lock the trolling motor, lock it in place, and then when you press it down, it releases the trolling motor so you can pick it up. I have selected to keep that in a loose position. The one thing that does is you cannot use the trolling motor in reverse, because if you're going to run this in reverse, it's going to pick itself up out of the water. But the reason I kept it this way is if I ever had to hit something like a rock or a stump or something under the water, this trolling motor will just kick up and it won't be fixed. I didn't want to put a lot of pressure on this mounting bracket and maybe damage my hull. I only use this trolling motor purely to run from one point to another, so I don't need reverse. I have my pedal drive, which I can just throw into reverse if I wanted to go. So this trolling motor is not fixed in here, it can actually swing up. There is modifications where you can actually with some pulleys you can reverse this, so you can actually use reverse, and you actually lift the trolling motor straight up. But that was a bit too complicated and adds more pulley ropes and things that I don't want to do. What I did do is I ran some wires through my hull for power, and I installed a trolling motor plug right here at the back. The power cables that come out of my trolling motor, that just goes in here and clips into there. It's a bit difficult with one hand because it has a little clip there, and there it's in. So my power comes off there. There's a trolling motor. Let's give you an idea of where it is in relation to the bottom. And I tried it this past weekend, and the depth seems to be good. And that is it. Mounted. Takes seconds to put on and take off. Okay, so how do I lift this up out of the water and deploy it? What I did is I just put a clamp around the shaft. Some people drill a hole straight through a shaft and put a eye bolt through there. I just clamped onto it for the time being, and I attach a pulley up here, and I attach onto this eyelet that's down here. This is actually pre-installed on the Hobie Outback, so that is existing. So I'm using that coming up through the pulley. I ran a cord down here through these two eyes all the way down here. I put a loop in here, and then this rope is just held in place there. So if you look at the back, it's down, and if I had to pull this, you'll see it just easily lifts the motor out of the water with very little effort at all. Just let it go back and it's deployed. Pull it again, and all I do is I hook it around. Okay, so it's a little bit difficult with one hand. You hook it down there and it stays up out of the water. So when I offload or bring my kayak into shore, I just lift it up like that and it's out of the water. Very, very, very straightforward. So this is my variable speed control I build. Like I say, look at Kayak Fisherman's channel and his videos. This box is a duplicate of what he's done. He's done various builds, and it works beautifully. It has at the top here a switch, a waterproof switch that puts it into forward and off, and then into reverse. And then of course it has the variable speed knob here, from literally just slowly turning the prop all the way up to 100% full speed ahead. I have two cables coming out the bottom, and what I've done is I have two cables installed on the bottom, so coming out of the bottom on that side. And if I had to lift up my seat, you'll see what I did is I put in a Hobie plug right here. So this cable is the one that comes, this red cable is the one that comes from my battery, and this one is the one that's going back to the trolling motor at the back. I just color coded them so that I made sure to plug them in correctly on my control box. So what I've done is I've just installed the control box clips in here on a Scotty mount for me. And that's a RAM mount, so I can adjust the height and stuff if I need to. but it sits here right next to my seat. I used it this whole weekend, never got on my way, and very easy to get to and control the speed and use it. Then in the front hatch, and what drives my whole system, is something I recently purchased, and that is a 60 amp lithium battery. I bought it from Tournament Lithium, 60 amp. For the way that I would use a trolling motor, 60 amps is probably more than what I need. I can probably get away with 30 amps, but I've been wanting a bigger battery because I do a lot of camping over the summer. Anything from 2-3 nights all the way up to 5 nights, and historically I could only use my fish finder for maybe 1.5 days before I ran out of power. With this beauty, I will be able to run my fish finders and other electronics quite easily for when I go camping and don't have access to power. I will not then use my trolling motor at that point, but I think this is a worthwhile investment if you can. And like I say, here up in Canada, Tournament Lithium is where we got it from, and love it so far. So it's plugged up and installed. Just to show you how it works, I'll put it into the forward, and then I'll start giving it power here, and I'll take you back to the front, to the back, and you can see there the motor is turning at a nice low speed. And what I can do is I can up that speed up to 100%, or anything in between, to basically literally just slowly turning. And the same if I turn it into reverse, the same. But like I said, I would not be able to use it in reverse unless maybe at a very low speed, but at too high a speed the motor will pull itself out of the water. So that is basically the install. It's very easy, very simple to do. Like I say, it's a Minn Kota C2 30-pound thrust trolling motor. That if you had to buy it new, retail probably for about 160 Canadian. I would say end of the day, all in all, with all the wires, the controls, everything I bought, and all the modifications I did, I probably like into this build about 200 to 250 Canadian dollars. Which, if you look at the cost of other trolling motors, which you can buy fully assembled with everything, runs you a lot more. So I find this is kind of a really cheap construction. Now the lithium battery, that of course that costs a lot more if you add it to the whole package. And of course you can now, depending on what you have in your kayak, you can decide what size battery. You can go 30 amps, you can go 60 like I did, or you can go all the way up to 100 amps. All depends on your needs. But what do I think about it? You know what, it's not something that I was actually originally contemplating, or what I personally think as a must-have. No, not at all. But after using this past weekend, I must say I kind of enjoyed it. I used it mainly for running from one point to another point, and then I lift it up, and then I just use my drive to while I fish to get around. But it works great running from one point to the other. I think, and it's not that accurate, but I was getting anything from 3.5 to 4 miles per hour on the water, easy. Which, you know what, if I had to use my drive, I can do that speed. But can I do it for the whole day? Probably not. I'm going to get really tired. And one thing I did notice, and you'll see in the clips I put in afterwards, the morning started off really calm, no wind, and then in the afternoon the wind picked up. And it actually did really well against the strong wind. We're coming right into the wind, into waves, and it still pushed me along quite nicely. And in the end of the day, yeah, no, definitely I was not as tired as I would have been doing exactly the same amount of distance just under my drive power. So, I mean, that's a benefit I do see. If you have to cover a lot of water and you have to do it under your own power, then you're going to be a little bit more tired. I can see using this for pre-fishing. You know, if I have done my pre-map studies and I've located a couple of places I want to see, now I can get there quite easily, you know, just put it on and cruise to the next spot and fish it. And I can cover a lot of water without too much of an effort. So it's fun. It's a fun addition to the kayak. Yeah, I'll give you some more feedback as the season goes along and my thoughts about it. Anyway, hope you enjoy it, and thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.
I've always thought, ever since I've been fishing here in the mid-70s, that... I'm doing 3.5 knots.